Major space companies like the UK's OneWeb as well as Mr. Musk's Starlink have already been able to launch thousands of satellites into near-Earth space. SpaceX has shown its interest to blanket the Earth with around 42,000 satellites. However, the entire scientific community has recently been worried about 40 SpaceX satellites were destroyed just a day after their launch. This happened after they were crushed by a solar storm in the Earth's orbit, leading to about 80% or 40 out of 49 of the Starlink LEO satellites. This has made space experts send warnings to SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, saying that major solar storms could disrupt low Earth orbit satellites like Starlink. With this, I know you're wondering what is solar flares and do they pose any threat to Earth apart from the satellites? Join us as we dive into this major topic of concern and the solutions that Musk is putting in place to curb solar flares. What are solar flares? Solar flares are intense explosions or localized eruptions from the sun's surface that emit large bursts of electromagnetic radiation. The classification of flares is usually determined by the intensity of the explosion. Thus, there are two phases of the sun in an 11-year solar cycle. Solar minimum, which is when there are fewer solar flares and coronal mass ejection or CME on the Earth's surface. On the other hand, solar maximum is when there is a great increase in these activities. Solar flares usually occur when a magnetic field builds up in the solar atmosphere and is released suddenly. According to the University Corporation of Atmospheric Research, these flares can last for several minutes, visible as bright flares in a particular region of the sun. According to a statement from NASA, magnetic fields generate an electrical current that acts as a magnetic dynamo inside the sun, which originate from electrically charged gases. The magnetic field leads to unsettled field behavior, where they twist and reorganize themselves due to the turbulence of the gases that trigger solar flare eruptions. These solar flares release electromagnetic radiations, a wave of electric and magnetic field traveling at the speed of light. They include radio waves, microwaves, visible light, and X-rays. Solar flares tend to be most prone in regions of the solar surface that contain sunspots. Sunspots are phenomena where the magnetic field is about 2,500 times stronger than Earth's, thus making some spots on the sun's photosphere appear darker than the surrounding areas. For the past few years, the Earth has been experiencing a period of solar minimum with no major effects. However, things may change much more quickly as the sun is now entering its active period. According to SpaceX, the 40 SpaceX satellites that were burnt in the atmosphere were due to increased atmospheric density in low orbit over the Earth. This happened after a geomagnetic storm with a large burst of solar plasma gas and electronic magnetic radiation was released. The geomagnetic incident resulted in the Starlink transmitters drifting back into the Earth's atmosphere, potentially costing the company $100 million. This incident is believed to be the largest collective loss of satellites from a single geomagnetic event, according to Jonathan McDowell, a Harvard-Smithsonian astrophysicist. With all these in mind, the question still remains, do solar flares have a threat to the Earth? Be glued as we dive into this big question. Solar storms pose a threat to Earth. The ability of only being able to observe but not calculate when a solar storm may come make things worse, as these solar flares are quite unpredictable. This is what our situation currently is, as there is no way we can protect ourselves or escape from these solar storms. However, humanity is not in much danger unless an extreme event happens. Otherwise, we should worry less about the loss of life. Further, since we depend on satellites and the internet for even emergencies and communication, the loss of satellites can lead to much harm to humans, especially if the disruption lasts longer than expected. According to National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, there are 5 classes of flares and their designation depends on the X-rays produced. Each letter represents a 10-fold increase in energy output. X-flares are the most powerful solar flares, followed by M-flares, which are 10 times smaller than X-flares. This is according to NASA. Then there are C-class, B-class, and finally A-flares that are very weak to pose any significant effect on the Earth. Different types of flares, to be precise. X-flares affect astronauts, satellites, and even the Earth. Although the most common flares are the A and B class solar flares, which pose little or no effect on the Earth. Now, I know things are getting more interesting, and you want to know more about the other 2 major classes of flares. For M-flares and X-flares, coronal mass ejections, a violent eruption from the sun of highly energetic particles, and magnetism can lead to geomagnetic storms that can result in auroras closer to the equator than is possible during cooler conditions. According to Space Weather Live, they can also cause radio blackouts ranging from minor to very extensive ones. These blackouts mostly affect high frequency or HF 3 to 30 MHz and sometimes very high frequency 30 to 300 MHz. There are some past instances or experiences that can prove it. In September 1859, a solar storm hit the Earth, causing all telegraph systems across North America and Europe to fail. Then in March 1989, another large solar storm accompanied a coronal mass ejection and hit the Earth, causing power grid failures and plunging the entire province of Quebec, Canada, into an electrical blackout that lasted 12 hours. And how can we forget the Halloween storms of 2003? This affected more than half of the orbiting satellites, and electrical grids went out in parts of Europe for some hours. Further, it disrupted airplane navigation and damaged transformers in South Africa. Furthermore, radiation storms with fast-moving changed particles carry a lot of energy that endangers astronauts. As such, during the storms, astronauts on the International Space Station need to seek shelter, as well as extravehicular activities are usually paused. SpaceX satellites orbit at lower altitudes, which pose a lot of threat as opposed to those that orbit at higher altitudes. With these risks being known, arises the big question of whether SpaceX took this hazard into account and whether they will continue to deploy spacecraft at this low altitude. Let's take a look at what are some of the solutions they have in place. Elon Musk's thought and solar flare solution. We all know Elon Musk is a person who, when confronted with a problem, never sleeps on it. From electric cars, artificial intelligence to his dreams of one day colonizing Mars, he's a man known to chase his dreams and fulfill his goals, even if the odds are not in his favor. As part of the business to beam high-speed internet service from space, SpaceX has deployed thousands of satellites into low Earth orbit. But the company's latest deployment of 49 new satellites launched did not go as planned. SpaceX said that they tried to drive the satellite in safe mode to reduce atmospheric drag, but their efforts were all in vain. Besides, SpaceX said in a statement that the affected satellites won't pose any threat as no satellite parts would hit the Earth and that they wouldn't collide with other satellites. Solar activity is on the rise now as we're experiencing Solar 25. Further, solar maximum is predicted to occur in 2025. Radiations emitted from solar flares travel at the speed of light and reach the Earth in just 8 minutes. With that in mind, we need to prepare ourselves to respond to such kinds of outbursts. Now, this is the thought of Elon Musk on this big issue. Elon Musk believes that we should invest in early detection as the first and major solution. This is the ground-based and space-based observation of the sun and particles traveling from the sun to Earth. Hence, this would mean a network of heliophysics observatories on Earth at the L1 Lagrange point in space and close to the sun. This will help us detect solar activity with enough advance warning to send a heads-up back to Earth before any solar storm strikes. Further, NASA has been able to improve the data, technology, and resources, which has enabled advancements in astronaut protection and weather forecasts. This has also helped them postpone activities that would otherwise pose a great danger due to solar energy particles. Well, that marks the end of our video today. If you like this video, make sure to check out more on our channel or click the subscribe button on your screen now.